Hey everybody, my name's Matt Yocum. I'm back here again today with Pro Sound Effects, bringing another video to you. Thank you to them for having me back. Today we're going to cover the topic of file management as well as session file management. And I think, obviously the reasons for going over this stuff today is obvious because everybody's working remotely. And so now more than ever, we need to make sure that we have a strong grasp and foundation in terms of organization and how we set things up so that we're, achieving success every time and able to deliver things in an efficient manner. There's obviously a couple of reasons for broaching this subject, even though it may seem a little bit dry, and those are time, because time is money, and obviously if you spend a little bit of time organizing things up front in a way that will last you throughout the production, then you will save a lot of time in the long run. There is your reputation on the line because turning over sessions with missing media or things that aren't able to relink can obviously be embarrassing and potentially damaging to your reputation if you're costing other people time. And then for posterity's sake, because sometimes we need to look back at these sessions a year or two later if they get opened up for any amount of reasons, and we need to be able to find exactly what we're looking for and have a folder structure and have our sessions organized in a way where it's easy to navigate them even if they're not fresh in our memory. So those are some of the reasons for going over this stuff. I will just sort of emphasize in the beginning that this stuff is really important to practice and to make sure that you're finding a system that works for you and then doing it consistently. Consistency is another big part of this that will be very helpful to you. Things obviously vary project to project, but if you find a system that in general works and you can stick to that, it'll make life a lot easier for you down the road. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we'll start off by going into my server here. You guys can see I have a pretty simple file structure here. I like to keep everything sort of easily accessible from the root. I just have it divided into categories, really, is how my mind works when it comes to folder organization. So my current projects I'm working on, Dropbox, which I just use for sending random files back and forth to people. I keep all of my installers for my software and plugins in here so I can update and work on different machines if I need to. Sound effects libraries, obviously. My archive projects, which are further organized by year. And then a documents folder, which is just a lot of personal stuff that I have backed up from my computer. One thing that I do want to show you guys, and this is something we'll talk about, is that I have a default film template that I like to work in. This is mostly, for feature films, but this is just sort of the idea of, or the concept of how we should be organizing things so that everything is organized and really easy to go back to later if we need to. I don't always use this full template if I'm working on something smaller like a short film or a music video or something of that nature. But I do want to just walk you guys through some of the steps here. I'm going to drag this out so that it's not distracting to have all the other stuff up. So if I open up this default film template here, you'll see I've got a media folder. Anything that comes from the picture department, I like to keep in one consolidated area because the last thing you want to do is have picture over in one area, all your AAFs over in one area, maybe all your guides are living inside your Pro Tool session, which by the way adds to overall file size when you're transferring things back and forth. So I keep these all categorized here, my AAFs, any official documents that I may have, whether that's start paperwork or invoices or time cards, EDLs, guide tracks, the actual picture files, and then the production sound rolls if I'm going to be dealing with dialogue on the show. Then I have my dialogue folder. I've got ADR and dialogue folders here. Inside each of these folders would probably be further subdivided depending on the size of the show, would be divided into reels. So we'd have reel 1, reel 2, reel 3, through 5 or 6 or 7, however many reels the film has. Same thing for sound effects. Sometimes if I've got different editors working on it, I'll split these sessions up so it's not all in one big effect session all the time. So sometimes I'll have an editor working on backgrounds, or I'll be doing that myself. I'll have a fully Q session that I have in here, and then I'll sometimes make a to and from Foley folder in terms of what material I've sent to Foley. That may be Q sessions or other material, and then what I've received back from them. So again, those would be divided by reels. They usually send it back that way. And then for sound effects, we would also further subdivide and have reel 1, reel 2, reel 3, reel 4, reel 5, and 6. Then down here we've got music. This is stuff, it could be a combination of source or score, stuff that I'm getting from the composers. And then once we're ready for mix, we would combine those sessions. Typically, if I'm doing like a one-person mix, I'll have a master template that has everything from dialogue down to music. So I just have one mix session folder in here. If it's going to be a two-man mix, then there would be a dialogue mix and an effects mix folder in here, and there would be ads for each of those. Because of the way I work, I've just got an ads folder here, which is dialogue, effects, and music. And those are anything that's going to come over after the mix has started that I'm getting as additional material from my effects editor or my dialogue editor or the composer. And then lastly, the deliverables. I don't have anything currently in this deliverables folder, the only reason being that this is going to be custom made for every show depending upon their delivery schedule and what it is that they're looking for. So it's kind of a waste of time to fill this out ahead of time. But if I just, start working on a new film and I can copy this folder down and then rename it, and I've already been sort of set up for success in terms of organization off the bat. Like I already know this structure. It's going to be easy to find things for me, easy to get things to and from. I forgot to mention that here too in the media folder. There's a to and from editorial, so I can send previews of stuff to the picture department if they want to carry those files in the Avid or Premiere. So while we're talking about the Finder level management stuff, I wanted to talk about how I deal with my Pro Tools sessions in Finder. So I'm going to open up just this demo session I did a couple years ago. And the first thing that you'll notice, this is a very simple session because it's just a demo that I did myself, just a little clip. But I put the name of the production in this case, and then I've also got a number here and my initials. So what that is anytime I go to open up a new session, if I was going to open up this session now, I would duplicate this session and I would version it up. So it goes from 08 to 09. And then I still have my initials because obviously it's still me working on it. If I were to hand this off to another editor, then what they would do is that they would duplicate it. Let's say I give this to Ryan Sullivan. He's going to version it up and work on it. And then when he's done working on it, he's going to send it back to me. And I am again going to version this up, put my initials back on it. And now it's really easy to track basically what's been happening in this session. So I had it, the way I wanted it, minus his work in 09. I sent it to him, he worked on it, and then I get it back. And so if there's something that I know that I had designed or put together that was here in session 9, and if for some reason it's not there when it gets sent back to me, well, now it's really easy for me to just go one session before his to get back whatever it is that I need. Or maybe let's say there was a scene that was in this version that was removed in a conform when he was working on it, and then they decide to bring that scene back later. It's easy for me to go back and find that. Along those same lines, anytime that I do a conform, typically what I'll do is when I'm ready to start the conform, I'll rename the file and I'll add conform at the end. And when it's done conforming, I will then remove the conform and version up again. And then let's say this is, Edit Tomorrow V2 now from the picture department. And now, again, it's really easy to track the version numbers as well as the steps in between. So I'll duplicate the file first thing in the morning. If I close down the session for some reason and I have to go somewhere and I come back and open it up later, even if it's the same day, I'll still duplicate the session. Basically, anytime I'm opening this session fresh, I will duplicate it so that it's easy to go back, because sometimes stuff can get wiped out, or like I said, scenes will get removed or added back in. And this is just one easy way of keeping track. And then anytime these start to sort of stack up in here, I can move this down into the Z old folder, and here's where I can easily go back and find the versions. These are a little bit out of order because I accidentally removed the demo, but you guys get the gist. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this session. And one of the things that we'll notice immediately is that it's going to tell me that I have some missing audio files and that they're not relinking, and that's on purpose. What I did basically is I just took audio files out of this folder and moved them here while Pro Tools was closed. And that's going to confuse it because essentially, and this is something that's important to understand really quick, all Pro Tools, all a PTX file is essentially a text file that's just looking for where files are and then has data for where they are on the timeline, what the automation for them may be, how that clip is cut up, what the timecode stamps are, et cetera, and all the metadata associated with a Pro Tools session. But in terms of understanding how Pro Tools is looking at things, it's always just searching for a file path for the audio files and the video files that it's linking to. So, for example, in this default film template, if I'm working on a mix and the media is coming, the picture file is in here in the media file folder, then in this mix session Pro Tools file, it's just going to show me a path order to get to media and to picture in order to find the right media that I'm linking to. So in this case, since I've moved audio files without Pro Tools being aware of it, it's going to tell me that it's looking for those 16 audio files. Normally, we could hit automatically find and relink, and it may or may not do a good job. If you're sending session to somewhere else, this may not be the best option, especially if there's a lot of connected drives that it's going to try to look through. So for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to learn how to manually find and relink this stuff and how to move stuff around the way we want. So you guys may or may not have seen this before. This is the relink window. And it's going to ask me to aim Pro Tools to find the files where I think they may be. So I know that they are on my desktop. So I'm going to go to my hard drive here, users, my user, and I'm going to click on desktop. I know specifically that's specific enough for this where it would find it quickly because I don't have a lot of stuff sitting on my desktop. I happen to know that they're right here. But one of the useful things here is, let's see, if I go over to path over here, I can actually drag this over. It will tell me where it thinks that these files last were. So these 16 files that I moved used to be on my desktop in the Edge of Tomorrow demo, and we can trace this file path, by the way. So if I go to my desktop, and then it tells me Edge of Tomorrow demo, and then audio files, this is where it thinks that they were, right? So now that they're no longer located, it's not sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to aim it now back at this new folder. We could select the whole desktop, or we could just select this folder itself. Make sure that all of these guys are selected, and then we're going to find these links. Most of the time, name by file and ID is fine. If for some reason it's not finding stuff, doing find by name is always a safe bet. I tend not to mess with these guys because this can result in some pretty bizarre relinking stuff if it's not matched perfectly. But let's just try by file name and file ID. And it's going to find those really quickly. If you have a larger drive with a lot more media, it may take longer, but that's okay. And one of the ways that we can actually see if it's working is if we do Option apostrophe, it's going to open up the task manager. And if this were actively looking for things, you would actually see like a little status bar here of this looking and finding these files. And you could it would tell you how many files out of how many available it has found and where it's looking. So I can then commit these links and hit yes. And so now all of my media is relinked here. And so that's all well and good for working on this session today. All my media is here, I'm working on it, and it's all good. Let's say, though, that my media is spread out over, instead of just being in a folder right beside my session where it's easy to find where everything is, in this server scenario where, actually I've got a copy of it on my desktop. So in this folder structure that I've got here, things can be located in all kinds of folders within here, and subfolders within subfolders within subfolders. So it can get complicated really quickly to find out what exactly the media is that you need to send to somebody. So if I wanted to send this session, let's say, to a supervisor, I wouldn't just save and send that session, this session file here, because it's not including the stuff that's here. So one thing that we can do to make sure is to obviously do a save copy in. And here there's obviously a bunch of different objects, preferences, which you can look through. So all the audio files within this session, the main playlists, and maybe you only want to do a few selected tracks. In this case, I want to do the whole session, so I could do it that way. But there is an alternate solution to making sure that all your media is in the same place. And one way that you can do this is if you hit Option O or Option I, these are going to open up your session workspace and your volumes workspace. So Option I is your volumes workspace, and Option O is your session. And basically your volumes is just going to be everything that's attached to your computer, whereas Option O for your session workspace is going to take you directly to the folder that it's located inside of Finder. So here's our Edge of Tomorrow work session. Here's the audio files. This isn't the actual audio files folder. This is going to be everything in your clips list. So make sure that you keep those two things sort of separate in your mind. This audio files folder isn't necessarily referring to this audio files folder here. It's referring to all the audio files that are linked within your session, which could be in multiple places and often are. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go all the way over to path again. I'm going to drag this guy all the way over and lay it somewhere in here so it's easy to see beside the file name. And I'll probably drag that out a little bit more so I can see more of the file path. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command and then press on one of these chiclets. And what that's going to do is it's now going to save a preset for me of what this window looks like every time I open it up. So if I exit out of that and then open up this window again, and I click on audio files, I'm now back in this sort of compact view that's a little bit hard to see where everything's at. So if I hit 1, now that I've already saved this preset, path is now dragged all the way back over to the left, and I can see my file names. And this is the way that I prefer to look at finding files really quickly. Now in this path order, we'll notice as we look down through these files that a couple of these have this ZEOT audio files, and this is the alternate folder that I made on the desktop. So a handful of these are going to a different location than the audio files folder located within the session structure. So if I sort by path, if I click on this up here, it becomes very quick and easy to see what sort of groups things are in. So now all of these in the external folder are all grouped together, and I can flip that path order to show these guys at the top. So I'm actually going to do a thing really quick where I'm going to shut this session down again. I'm not going to save. And that's going to basically, it's going to forget the links to where these guys are. So I'm going to open it back up again. And let's say you opened up your session and for some reason you exited that automatic relink window. And sometimes it's hard to remember how to get back to that. So that's why I emphasize that you guys should practice this a few times to sort of get it in your muscle memory on how to do this stuff. So let's say I decided to skip and I realize, oh no, I'm in my session, I'm working, and there's a couple of audio files in here that aren't relinked correctly. How am I going to get those back without closing down the whole session and reopening the thing again? Because that can take a long time. I'm going to hit Option O. I'm going to open back up my preset, go back into the audio files folder, and again, it's gonna highlight for you which files are relinked, are unlinked here, links that it cannot find. So I'm gonna sort by the path order again. Give it a second to think. And as you'll notice, because it thinks that these relinked or that these unlinked files used to be located here, it's not going to sort them in any way that's useful to me because it thinks that everything was located in the same folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select relink offline. Okay, so this is how we get back to this relink window if you accidentally exited out of that first page that automatically pops open when you open up the session. So just one more time so you guys see that. I'll select all of these audio files and then relink offline is right here. I'm just right clicking to get to this menu, relink offline. And here they are. And now again, same process. I can aim these at my desktop. Probably drag this out. And this is a sort of window again where I can hit Command and then click on one of these chiclets to save a preset. So now that I can just hit one and it'll open up this view every time so it's not so squished since I'm here on this little laptop at the moment. So I'll aim it at the desktop, find links, find by name or file ID as well, hit OK. And here's all the links that has worked. So we're going to commit those. We're going to say yes. But let's say for some reason, you know, I wanted to deliver this whole session, but everything's spread all out all over my computer, right? So I've got things in 2 folders at the moment, but I don't want to do a save copy in because that's going to duplicate all of my material, and that's sort of a clunky way of handling the situation if I want to deliver this session as a whole. I don't want to have double the file space taken up because I know everything is just sitting right beside each other on the desktop. So what I can do here is I can select these files, which are sorted by path again. These are all of the ones that are located in that other folder. I can right click and I have 2 options for dealing with these files and moving them into the folder where everything else is located. So if I right click here again, I can copy and relink or I can move and relink. And these are exactly what they sound like. So if I go into the Finder level here, go to audio files, I'll do this twice actually so that you guys can see this. So, or I'll do both operations rather. So inside of this demo session, here's my audio files folder and it's missing the folder from these guys, but I want these to be in here. Maybe these are spread out over 16 different places, so I don't want to do it all manually because that would take forever. So I'm going to highlight these and I'm going to copy and relink. It's going to copy those files and it's going to ask me where I want them, and I want them in this original audio files folder inside the session folder, and it's going to automatically relink them there. So I'm going to hit open, and there we go. It's already moved all that stuff there. It looks like there was one that we actually left off. Oh, nope, it populated itself. So now they're all located in the exact same area, and it's copied them. So you'll notice that out here on the Finder level, these guys are still sitting in this folder because it copied them. It didn't move them. But if I undo, I'm actually not sure if I can undo that. I can't undo that. But if I wanted to move them, all I would have to do is then hit move, and you would notice that these guys would disappear and wind up in this audio files folder. This is, again, this is just sort of understanding the concept that Pro Tools is just looking at file paths to try to get to where all these files are. And so if we break those links, Pro Tools is sort of, it's just not going to know. It doesn't have a crystal ball where it knows what's happening while the program isn't active. So you have to tell it where things are. Sometimes that may just mean aiming it at the sort of the root of a session folder so that it can search the whole thing and repopulate those files. Sometimes you need to do what I was talking about, where you're moving or copying files within a folder structure so that everything is located in the same place. Or sometimes it may make sense where things are really spread out all over the place and you need to move stuff onto a drive to just go ahead and do a save copy in. So there's sort of different scenarios where different actions are appropriate, of course. I just wanted to go over that with you guys. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. And that about covers it. So the goal here obviously was just to sort of demystify the way that Pro Tools looks at things, which I just talked about. This will help you a lot to stop creating duplicate material by not doing 5 or 6 save copy-ins every time something gets a little bit funky and files are spread out. Now you'll be able to just pop open your window, and to go into your audio files folder and to know exactly where stuff is located. And when you're delivering stuff, it'll work the first time. So a good habit to get in is like, when you migrate something, let's say from here to an external drive, what I would do then is I would open up this session and I would make sure that everything is relinking in the first place. But I would go a step beyond that and I would open up that session workspace. I would go into the audio files folder. I would sort by path order, and I would make sure that everything is on that drive and not relinking to my server or to another computer before I deliver it. Because sometimes, and I've seen it happen, you'll do a save copy in, or you're sure that everything's within a folder, and you'll send it, and for some reason, things won't relink. So I always double check anytime I'm copying something over to an external drive or making a duplicate folder structure. I'll always double check that everything is relinking where it should be, so that it's all going to the right place in the right time. And this will make you a time saver. It'll make you dependable, which will up your reputation. And people will learn that they can rely on you, and you won't be the person showing up to a place without all your media or sending incomplete sessions along. So I know this wasn't maybe the most stimulating topic to go through, but if you guys ever have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I'll make sure that Pro Sound Effects puts my information out there for you guys. We'll make sure that also that you guys actually have this default film template if you want it. You can always adapt this structure to your own workflows. And yeah, I hope it was useful for you guys, and thanks for watching.